What's up, guys? You're watching the Cheap Stack Show, and we've had some big hits on this show recently, some very cheap guys that went off. And this week, I've got another one that I think that you're going to like, and I'll get into it after this. There is a ton of value in current underdog playoff best ball ADP. Elite offenses like the Bills are easy to stack. Take advantage of uncertainty and start drafting now. Use the promo code SEEK for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. And subscribe to Heat Seeker Sports on YouTube for underdog strategy and drafting shows. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heat Seeker Sports. You're watching the Cheap Stack Show, and this is a show where we've had a ton of success throughout the season. We take a fresh look at the slate and have no bias from listening to any other DFS shows throughout the week, and we examine it based on what the numbers are telling us. And last week had a whole bunch of hits. Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, and Chase Brown were the big ones last week. And I think I got one that I'm keying in on just looking at the slate today that I really like. And it's a opportunity that I've been waiting on for actually a few weeks. And I talked about it a few weeks ago, but I think this is the week to use it. And I will get into that in a minute. Before I do that, make sure to hit the like button. Get me to 15 likes. I'll put out a shorter video before the show starts, before the games start tomorrow. And if I get that 15 likes too late, like right up until showtime, like I did on today show for the showdown shows, I will post it on the YouTube comments, and you guys can comment and say if you like the picks or give your own picks or whatever. But today I had to post it on the YouTube comments because I didn't get that 15 like until like 20 minutes before the game started. So make sure to do that and keep an eye on the comments if we get that 15 likes too late. And as always, if you guys hit like on the video and you're not going to get up to 15 likes, just shoot me an email on Twitter or something like that, a DM on Twitter, and I'll give you some of what my favorite plays would have been for the video. And got a new promotion going with Underdog. Make sure to sign up for an Underdog account. Make your first deposit. They will match you up to $100 if you use the promo code SEEK. That's SEEK, like Heat Seekers. Use the promo code SEEK, and they will match you up to $100 on your first deposit, which is great because we're on playoff best ball season. And playoff best ball is the best ball there's out there because you don't have your money tied up for an entire season. You're only having it tied up throughout the playoffs. And each week that your teams advance through the playoffs, you get a payout. So you're not waiting until the end of the entire thing to get a payout. You're getting weekly payouts if your teams advance, and you're setting yourself up to have fun throughout the playoffs and to have a rooting interest throughout the playoffs. And it's just a fun new strategy, different from regular best ball and regular, like weekly fantasy best ball. It's my favorite format by far. So we'll start putting out content for that this coming up week. At the promo in the beginning of this show, I talked about the Buffalo value, and I really like the Buffalo value because everybody's kind of jumping ship on Buffalo right now, and they still have a realistic path to make the playoffs. They have to win out the season, and if they don't win out the season, they need a couple other elements to help them get into the playoffs. But I have a feeling that they will be able to maybe pull off winning out the season. The toughest game that they have left is the game against Miami in week 18. That's going to be their toughest matchup, and that may be the deciding factor if they make it in the playoffs or not. So it's not an easy path by any means, but they do have a path. And their ADP value is tremendous right now on Underdog. They're easy to stack. And it's the type of team that, goes into the playoffs. They had to earn their way in. They have a greater appreciation for being in the playoffs, and they're going to be playing for their lives. And I think that type of mentality is what helped Cincinnati a couple years ago when they made a run to the Super Bowl. It's helped other teams in the past, like the Giants had a few runs like that. But I really think that these teams that really have to grind and almost have it taken from them and they have to earn it really do well in the playoffs because they have a greater respect for what it took to get there. So I like a lot of teams have value like that in the playoffs this year, and I'll go over that when I do those shows. But for today, we are doing the Week 15 main slate. So let's get into this. Make sure to hit subscribe on the YouTube page. You're going to want to hit subscribe because when I put those videos out, then you can sign up for alerts to know exactly when they're posted. Sometimes I don't get those shorter videos up until about an hour before lock. I just want to make sure that I have all the information I need, like inactives and stuff like that. So you want to hit subscribe on the YouTube page to make sure that you're getting those. And also, I'm aiming for 300 subscribers. I've got 225 right now. I want to get 300 by the end of the season. So I appreciate any help with that. If I've helped you with, thinking things through on these slates or helping you out with picks, like Chase Brown last week and stuff like that, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. So let's get into this slate. It's an interesting slate because Matthew Stafford is the chalkiest quarterback, and he's like 20%. We never see that with quarterbacks, especially like pocket quarterbacks. So very surprised to see that with Matthew Stafford, and that's why I don't watch this content throughout the week, is because I don't want to get talked into Matthew Stafford at 20% ownership, because that to me is bad chalk, because Stafford can easily fail any given week. He's failed for most of the weeks this season. Let's take a look at that game right off the bat. It's the high total game on the week. Obviously, they got Washington. That's one of the best matchups you can ask for a quarterback. But there's other quarterbacks out there that have good matchups too. Stafford is also cheap at 6K. So it makes a lot of sense why people are going there. But for 20% ownership on Matthew Stafford, I'm gonna pass on that. He's had 3 good weeks in a row, 23.6 points last week, 22, almost 23 points the week before that, and then 24 the week before that. But beyond that, like, he hasn't really done a whole lot. He had a bunch of 15, 16 type performances in there, but not anything to write home about. And for the 20% ownership that is projected on Matthew Stafford, I want a guy with a lot more upside than what he's showing, because I want to have a guy with a score that's gonna cost me, like a win. I like Howell actually better than I like Stafford, I think, because Howell is he's in a pretty good matchup himself. He is in a matchup against the Rams, which are giving up 20 DraftKings points a game, and Howell is pretty much leading the league in a lot of these quarterback metrics as far as like passing yards and stuff like that. So he's having a hell of a season. And wide outs for Washington are getting 23 points a game against the Rams. So Sam Howell is more interesting to me this week than Matthew Stafford. He is not cheap when it comes to ownership, but he is under 10%. So I would rather pivot to Howell in that game and go with Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams is going to be also highly owned, probably looking at like between 30 and 40%. But Kyren Williams has been having a lot more, I think, consistent upside than Matthew Stafford this year. He's had success all year round, and I like his matchup this week. He's a good pivot off of Stafford if you want to go with Howell and run him back with Stafford. I do like that game just because it's a 50.5 point total, and the spread is within a touchdown. So it's going to be a high scoring game, and that's always a good recipe for us. As far as the receivers in that game, let's see what their the ownership is in those receivers real quick here. Looking at highest owned guy, Demarcus Robinson is 23% from what I'm seeing. I find this hard to believe, but Cooper Kupp is at 9.7%, which I like. You got let's see, Puka Nakua is 14%. So you got some interesting discounts on Kupp and Nakua. Demarcus Robinson at 36%, though. Yeah, he got 10 targets last week, but I'm not really sure why he got 10% last week, or 10 targets last week. But he had a decent opportunity last week, but he didn't really do anything with it. He only got 46 yards and a touchdown. So I mean, this seems to me like bad chalk. I don't want to start Demarcus Robinson this week. We're really looking at a matchup that mainly benefits wideouts on both teams. The slot receivers on the Rams have a good matchup. Maybe that's what Demarcus Robinson is so popular this week. But Puka Nakua and Cooper Kupp obviously run a lot of their routes from the slot, and Tutu Atwell does too. Atwell is questionable this week. You can see what the latest says. Let's see. Atwell managed just one limited practice this week due to a concussion. So it looks like he's in the concussion protocol. So maybe we don't see Tutu Atwell. Maybe that's what Robinson is filling in for. But regardless, Robinson is, we'll try and find a better cheap receiver than Robinson this week. All right. So now that we've kind of gone over that game a little bit, if I was going to stack, actually, if I was going to stack Howell, I think your best options are going to be Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin, because the wideouts are getting that 23 points I was talking about from the Rams defense. If we're looking at McLaurin, 0 points last week. He's really been on a downswing this season. He's had a couple good weeks. One of the weird things about Sam Howell that I noticed is that, even with the big weeks that he puts up, like none of these receivers have really kind of benefited from it. We see, Jahan Dotson has scattered big weeks. Terry McLaurin has scattered big weeks. Samuel has scattered big weeks. But there's really no consistency in how these wide receivers are performing, despite like all these points that Sam Howell is putting up. So one of the strategies that I like to do with Howell is just start him, as a cheaper option for a quarterback, because he's only 6,300. So I start him. I don't put any weapons with him usually. And, like that way you're not having to pick out, which of these guys is going to go off. Curtis Samuel, I don't like Curtis Samuel this week because the Rams are pretty good against the slot. They're only giving up 15 DraftKings points a game. So it really would be a choice between Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin, and then the tight end. Tight end has a pretty good matchup too. Logan Thomas has not really done anything either. So it's like another thing with these receivers for Sam Howell. It's like, where are all these passing yards going to, and where are all these like fantasy points going to with the receivers? Because Sam Howell is putting up 20 DraftKings points a game. You look at his receivers, McLaurin's putting up 11 DraftKings points a game. Dotson is 9 DraftKings points a game. Samuel is 10 DraftKings points a game. Where are these receptions and these passing yards going to? They're not generating any DraftKings points. So, I don't hate putting Sam Howell in by himself. Robinson is out this week. That is interesting for Gibson. Gibson is a guy that I would not mind stacking with Sam Howell, but he doesn't have a good matchup this week against the Rams. They're giving up only 19 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. Let's check and see what kind of receptions that they are giving up. The Rams are giving up middling receptions. They're only giving up 5.6 targets a game and 4.9 receptions. As far as receiving yards, the Rams are, they're among the toughest matchups for receiving backs. So I don't even like Gibson this week, even though he's not going to have Robinson in there competing for touches. So, Sam Howell, I don't hate stacking Sam Howell and running Sam Howell back with, like Nakua or Cup, and hoping that Stafford just has a bad game and Howell is running in his own touchdowns or something like that. So that might be a way that I would approach that game from a stacking standpoint. That gets you a little bit different from the field. Gives you a pivot off of Stafford, and it makes sense just based on like what Howell has done with his receivers. They're not getting any DraftKings points. The receivers. There's no point in stacking them with Howell and taking that putting it all the chance on that. Atlanta at Carolina is the next game. This one is looking at a total of 34 and a half 34 and a half points, 3-point spread. Bryce Young has a good matchup. 19 DraftKings points a game is what Atlanta is giving up to the quarterback position, but I really just do not want to touch this game. It's as far as the Atlanta side, they're all over the place with where they're distributing the touches and the opportunity. But let's take a look at Bijan because he's been doing stuff recently. At least Bijan's been doing stuff recently. He got 10 attempts last week, 18 the week before that, 16 the week before that. We know that Carolina sucks against the run. So let's take a look and see what the ownership is on Bijan. I'm seeing about 13% is super cheap for this matchup. That makes him interesting to me. Let me take a look at another source and see what their ownership projection is. Same, about 11%. So we're seeing cheap ownership on Bijan Robinson. I think it's kind of going under the radar that he's been getting more opportunity recently. 7 targets last week, 5 targets the week before that, 6 targets the week before that. Seems like somebody whispered to the coach there to get Bijan going. They used a first round draft pick on a freaking running back, and you're not going to use him is just horrible coaching. And as we see from week 12 on, he has been used a lot more in the game plan, and that's might be a bye week adjustment or something like that, but at least the message has gone through, and Bijan Robinson is getting usage now, and he's got that discount in the ownership, and he is in probably about as good a matchup as you can get, with Carolina giving up 25 and a half DraftKings points a game. If Atlanta's able to come in and kind of take this game over, they're playing in Carolina. We do have rain concerns, but I do like Bijan, especially at this price. He's not even that expensive either. So Bijan is cheap. He's got a good matchup. He's going to be low owned. Like, to me, that's a perfect recipe to have a heavy exposure to this guy this week. Other than Bijan, really nothing that I'm interested in. I have a rooting interest, though, for my my best ball teams because I got Drake London on my best ball team that made it through. Only did 12 of the best ball mania drafts. I got one through. I was actually surprised to get one through because my ownership of Aaron Rodgers and J.K. Dobbins, I had about 30-40% of each of those guys, and they got just taken out in the first week, and my season was over after week one, basically. And then the injuries throughout the rest of the season did not help. But yeah, Drake London's matchup this week is, let's take a look and see if he'd even be in a good matchup. He's not a horrible matchup, but it's a middling matchup, and it's not enough to get me interested in Drake London. Adam Thielen does have an interesting matchup. Like Atlanta is giving up 21 DraftKings points a game to the slot receivers, but Thielen has been kind of rough recently. Had that nice little run at the beginning of the season that we took advantage of, but we haven't really been on him since after that run, basically. Yeah, like week 6, I haven't had any interest in him beyond that. And it was easy to pivot off him. We kind of rode him through all those big weeks, and now it's he's out to pasture, so we're not starting Adam Thielen anymore. So let's go to Chicago versus Cleveland. This is one of those scenarios we need for Buffalo to have a better chance of advancing. We need Chicago to win this game. We're looking at a 37.5 point total, a 3-point spread. Where are they playing? They're playing in Cleveland. So really need Chicago to come through to help that Buffalo best ball play. Make sure to make your deposit on Underdog. Like I'm saying, like use the promo code SEEK. I'm going to be putting out a ton of best ball, playoff best ball content to help you guys through it. And it's a fun game to play, and you won't regret it. You'll have fun doing it. And it became my favorite game real quick a couple years ago. But Fields has been pretty on fire for a few weeks there. He had a couple 30-point weeks, then he got hurt. So I don't just ignore that 6-point week, but then he came back with 24 points. He only had 12 points against Minnesota. Minnesota's got that great defense. They're blitzing a ton, and Brian Flores is just like dominating teams. But then last week he had 24 points against Detroit. Now he's got that Cleveland matchup, and it's not a great matchup for a quarterback. Let's see what Cleveland is doing. I want to see if I can see what Cleveland is doing against rushing quarterbacks. Now, Cleveland is only having 4 rushing attempts against them. Let's see what rushing yards. As far as rushing yards, they're allowing 17 rushing yards a game to quarterbacks. What their pressure rate? Cleveland's, they got a pretty high pressure rate. They got Garrett, Myles Garrett, and all those studs in there. So Cleveland's defense is going to be a tough matchup for Justin Fields. On the other side, though, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's been really good. Recommended him last week. He ended up getting us 25 DraftKings points. Not sure what I think about Joe Flacco this week, though. He's at 5,500, so he's more expensive. Last week we got him at 4,900. But Chicago has been a really good defense recently, kind of underrated, only allowing 15 DraftKings points a game. Actually, they're only allowing 13 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So Flacco is a fade for me this week. I don't like starting any of these guys against Chicago's defense the way that they're playing lately. The only guy that has a really decent matchup is the slot receiver for Chicago. That would be Darnell Mooney. Let's see what Darnell Mooney. Oh, you know what? Tyler Scott, I think, has been running. No, I thought he was running from the slot, running a decent amount of routes from the slot, but he's only at 21% from the slot. Darnell Mooney Yeah, he still hasn't been doing anything. He got 7 targets last week, so, you know, not a whole lot of interest in this game. I can't really talk myself into it. Njoku has a good matchup though. He's got 13.7 points a game is what Chicago's giving up to the tight end position. And Njoku and Flacco were on fire last week. 27 DraftKings points, 8 targets last week. Ended up getting 2 touchdowns. Njoku is 4,700. Let's see what his ownership is. Ownership on Njoku is 10%, so he's not going under the radar, but 10% is still, like relatively cheap. So I don't hate that for Njoku. Njoku is a guy to keep in your player pool. I wouldn't stack him with Flacco or anything like that, but Njoku is a guy to keep in your player pool this week. This is a good matchup for him, and he's shown chemistry with Flacco. So moving on to Tampa Bay and Green Bay. This is another interesting matchup, and I think this is one that's going a little bit overlooked. Maybe let's see what Tampa Bay and Green Bay. Let's see what that quarterback position is. 4% for Jordan Love. Love that. Love that in this matchup because the Bucks are giving up 22.8 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. Let's see what kind of pressure rate they're getting on the quarterbacks because we know that Jordan Love is vulnerable to pressure. Let's see, looking for that pressure rate. For Tampa Bay. Let's see. Give me a second here. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are giving up 32% pressure rate. That is not good. That is bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bottom 5 in the league. So really a clean matchup for Jordan Love. He is 6,200. He's only 200 more than Stafford. The total in this game is 41.5 points. It's much less than that Stafford matchup, but Jordan Love has a comparable matchup as far as DraftKings points. So I do like Jordan Love this week, and looking at who benefits the most for Green Bay, Tampa Bay is giving up 30 DraftKings points a game to the slot receivers, and that is where Jaden Reed is running 77% of his routes. Let's see what Jaden Reed's ownership is. He's about 16%. That's not horrible. I like Jaden Reed as a stacking partner. Look at what he's done recently. How is Jaden Reed still $4,900? Like, Jaden Reed gets so much opportunity and he stays cheap. He got 20 DraftKings points last week. We used him as a captain in Showdown. 5.5 versus Kansas City. So that was a bust. But then he had that string of 3 weeks in a row where he scored 15 DraftKings points, 19 and 19. So Jaden Reed is having a great season. He is remaining cheap because nobody, for whatever reason, nobody likes to pull the trigger on the Packers. And he's in a great matchup this week, and he's a great pivot. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with this cheap stack here. I'm gonna put in Jordan Love. I'm gonna put in Jaden Reed. I'm gonna start it like that. With the opposite side, let's see who benefits the most on the opposite side. Green Bay's been really good against the passing game. They're really, you know what? They're bad against the run game, though. So that puts our guy Rashad White in play. 24.5. He's been great lately. He's just been super consistent. He's getting the majority of the workload for the offense, not just for the running backs. So let's put White in there too. not going to go heavy on this stack, but I do like those three players. I think the script writes itself because Tampa Bay is a pass funnel defense and Green Bay is a run funnel defense, and we have players that are good in the passing game on Green Bay side, and we have a player that is good in the running game on Tampa Bay side. So, that is a great little setup there. So let's start off with that. We'll build as we go along, but those are the guys that I like. Romeo Dubs, Romeo Dubs, 7 DraftKings points last week, 11 the week before that, 7 the week before that. Those were weeks with Christian Watson. Earlier in the season, when Christian Watson was out, he was getting 18 DraftKings points a few times. So maybe we see Romeo Dubs kind of go back to the way that he was earlier in the season. And, he doesn't have he's got a middling matchup. Tampa Bay giving up 11.7 DraftKings points a game to those wideouts. So I don't hate his matchup. What is Watson's situation? Watson is doubtful. Wicks is another guy. What is Wicks's slot? Not sure what Wicks's slot routes are. I think he runs a decent amount from the slot, though. Wicks is interesting too. If you didn't want to go with Jaden Reed, but for Jaden Reed, only $900 more than Wicks is insane. So that's a great price on Jaden Reed. So I'm just going to stick with Reed there. I don't think we need to pivot off of that. Let's go on to. Oh, actually, with Tampa Bay too, you got to cover Mike Evans. Mike Evans is 7,500. He's having a great year. He had a down week last week, only 1.8 points against Atlanta. Mike Evans is a guy that can beat a matchup like this. He scored 32 points against Carolina, which has a good pass defense. Let's see, who else did he do well against? He did well against Atlanta. He did well against Chicago. He's done well in some tough matchups. So I don't hate running it back with Evans too if you want to, but I think I'm going to stick with White for now. The Jets versus the Dolphins. Let's see. Jets versus the Dolphins is a matchup that we saw a couple weeks ago. When I did the showdown episode, I was one guy off of shipping that one. I had Garrett Wilson in there instead of Jalen Waddle. That was the only swap I needed to make, and it would have been an easy one. But the reason why I was able to nail that game was because I projected that both teams would be low scoring, and we have Tyreek Hill doubtful this week, or on the doubtful side of questionable, or game time decision. I shouldn't say doubtful. He's going to be a game time decision. So I'm going to guess that Tyreek is going to play, but this is more of a game for running backs. I'm hoping that Achane plays. I think he's a game time decision as well, but he did play on Friday's practice. I think he did practice on Friday. Yeah, he had a limited practice on Friday, so he still has a chance to play this week. But Mostert is a guy that would benefit if Achane is out, obviously. So let's check and see what Mostert's ownership is this week. The Jets are bad against the run. Mostert is only 3%. And the Jets, they're giving up 25 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. We got a situation where Tyreek Hill is hurt, and he has a bad matchup on top of that. And yeah, Jalen Waddle hasn't done too much this season. Um, I think this is a good spot for Raheem Mostert. I'm going to put Mostert in this lineup now, and we'll build it as we kind of go along here. Other than that, I'm not interested in a whole lot. Miami's defense has been really good lately. Uh, there is talk about Aaron Rodgers. He's been activated now, so he has a chance to play this year, which is insane, and it's great. I hope to see him play. Because that shows a major step in the recovery of these Achilles injuries, which at just a couple years ago were pretty much the end of a career for a player to get those Achilles injuries. So if we see Aaron Rodgers come back this year and able to play, then that really shows a lot of progress with taking care of those injuries, which is great. As far as the Jets side, there's no one I'm really interested in. Nobody has a good matchup against Miami. Miami's been playing really well with their defense. They've really come along with Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator, and then having their guys back and healthy. The only good matchup in this entire game is that Mostert matchup. So he's the only guy I'm interested in that game. Moving on to the Giants versus the Saints. We're getting close to the game of the week, or at least the spot of the week. I shouldn't say the game of the week. The Giants versus the Saints. They're really Olave is interesting, which also makes Shaheed interesting. The wideouts against the Giants are getting 18 DraftKings points a game, which makes Shaheed and Olave interesting. Have to see what Shaheed's status is. Olave is questionable. Let's see what Olave's issue is. He's got an ankle injury. Failed to practice in any capacity this week. So that's not what we like to see if we're considering Olave. Olave at 7K though, I wouldn't be considering him anyways. Shaheed though at 4,300. Shaheed, we've gone to Shaheed many times throughout the season, and he's paid off for us a few times. When I recommended him on this show, it was a couple busts too, but Shaheed is in another good spot this week against this Giants defense. So I don't hate Shaheed this week at 4,300. I'm not going to plug him in or anything just now, but we'll keep him in mind when we're building up this lineup. Other than that, let's see. I don't really, not really interested in Barkley too much. Not interested in anyone really on the Giants side. Not buying into the Tommy Cutlets situation. So let's go on to the next game. Houston versus Tennessee. This is going to be the game that I'm interested in. I talked a few weeks ago about how I was waiting for a good spot to use Will Levis playing at home. Rookie in a comfortable environment. He's only 5,400 this week, so he's cheap. Gives us some salary relief. And the quarterbacks versus Houston are getting 21.4 DraftKings points a game. That sets up Levis to have a nice game. Wideouts are getting 16.5 DraftKings points a game from Houston, which is good for DeAndre Hopkins. And just a lot of green in this matchup for Tennessee. The slot receivers are getting 21 DraftKings points a game from Houston, and the tight ends are getting 14.7 DraftKings points a game from Houston. So Will Levis, I like a lot. Showed his upside again last week, 21.5 DraftKings points against Miami. We saw his upside in week 8 against Atlanta, and DeAndre Hopkins went off that week. I think Will Levis to DeAndre Hopkins is in play this week against Houston, and I think it's a good play this week because Tennessee's playing at home. They're going to be playing spoilers to division rivals, and they have a potential to, crush Houston's hopes and dreams of getting in the playoffs. Stroud is hurt. They are Houston's a good run defense, so I think that Derrick Henry is not going to have as good a week as he normally would. Houston is only allowing 19 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, but they are allowing a boatload of DraftKings points to the passing game. And that puts Will Levis squarely in play this week. This is the spot that I've been waiting for ever since that first time that we saw Will Levis. He went on the road after that and busted a few weeks in a row. He showed signs of life again last week. Where did they play last week? Last week they played at Miami. So this week he's back home in a comfortable environment, and he's playing against a team that is giving up points to the passing game of their opposition. So I like Will Levis this week, and we'll get into that more after we build this love stack here. So let's put in Hopkins in this lineup because I do like Hopkins. He's at 6,200. He's relatively cheap this week. Let's see. Kansas City at New England. Not really interested in anything here. I don't want to figure out that Kansas City offense. We do have what's his face? Pacheco is out this week. He some sort of I think like a shoulder injury is what it was. Yeah, his shoulder is hurt. He's having some sort of a procedure on it. Bad news for Pacheco. And bad news for the Chiefs offense. Chiefs offense has been horrible, horrible all season. And, people are actually surprised by how horrible they are. But when you're paying your quarterback $500 million and you can't afford to surround him with any other good players, you got to kind of pick and choose your spots. They chose to spend up on defense, and they've left Patrick Mahomes with no weapons except for aging Travis Kelce. Been talking about that all season. I think the Chiefs are going to get early elimination from the playoffs this year. I'm avoiding them in playoff best ball, unless, of course, we end up getting a super good value on them. Promo code SEEK will get you a $100 match in playoff best ball. When you make a $100 deposit on Underdog, they will match you up to $100. Use the promo code SEEK. And the Chiefs, I think that they will not make it far in the playoffs this year. They just do not have any weapons. You can't make it deep in the playoffs with the weapons that they have. They're just they're just horrible. And Patrick Mahomes has not elevated any of these players. I thought it was hysterical, like that press conference that he had with the refs taking away greatness from Travis Kelce. Your teammate took away greatness from Travis Kelce because he didn't know how to line up. So, that whole situation was just absolutely ridiculous. And I think it's just signs that that they're cracking over there in Kansas City after a year of just horrible play on the offense. The defense has been on fire though, great defense, but the offense just sucks. So I'm not really interested in anyone from this game. Also got Stevenson is out too. Let's see. There's no one really to go to in this matchup. We got a super low total in it too. It's only a 37-point total. Zeke Elliott might be interesting. He's 5,800 though. That's the only thing. Zeke Elliott has a good matchup against Kansas City, who's giving up 24.7 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. They're also giving up 21 DraftKings points a game to the slot. Juju's in another revenge game. He did well against his old team Pittsburgh last week, and now he faces his old team Kansas City, and he's in the slot, which is another good matchup for Juju. But Zeke is the guy that I would be interested in. I would keep Zeke in your player pool this week. He's pretty, relatively cheap at 5,800, and Juju Smith-Schuster at 3,600. I don't hate that either, but he's questionable. And with Juju, it's like if he's questionable going into a game, you probably want to stay away from him because there's a good chance that maybe he plays one series and he's out for the game. So yeah, really no interest there except for Zeke. San Francisco versus Arizona. Looking at a game where San Francisco has a 30.5 point team total. They are 13.5 point favorites. But as we've seen with San Francisco, that really doesn't matter because they're going to put up their points regardless. And from a ownership perspective, as usual, McCaffrey is going to be the highest owned guy. Purdy has got a decent amount of ownership on him, but Purdy is also 6,800 now. So like the value is out on Purdy. Like the Purdy, when we were recommending him, he was in that, like 5,500 range. And now he is 6,800. So the value is gone with Purdy. Still like him as an MVP candidate. Was talking him up throughout the season, but from a value standpoint, I don't think he's a value anymore. Looking at running backs, Arizona is giving up 29 Draftkings points a game to the running back position. Meanwhile, San Francisco is giving up 27 Draftkings points a game to wideouts. Don't really see a wideout that I'd be interested in. Marquise Brown he's questionable. He's another one of those guys that if you see him questionable, he's just, he gets hurt too easily. I wouldn't want a questionable Marquise Brown, especially the way that he's been performing this year. But don't be surprised if you see him have a decent game in this matchup. Let's see. Other than that, the interest that I have in this game would be mainly Christian McCaffrey. But I don't know if I can afford him the way that my lineup is going. I guess I could afford him. Let's plug him in. What's his price? 93. We don't need McCaffrey this week. Let's see. Next game is Washington at the Rams. We talked about that game already. Not interested in putting anyone one-offs from Washington in my lineups except for Sam Howell. From the Rams side, Kupp, Nakua, Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams is expensive, though, at 7,500. Those other guys are 7,500 too. So if I was going anywhere in this game, I'd take Williams, I think. But yeah, that's about it that I would take from that game as one-offs. Dallas versus Buffalo. This should be a high-scoring game, but it could also be, like one of those games that everybody goes in thinking it's going to be a high-scoring game and it ends up scoring like 40 points or something like that. Got a 50.5 point total, very close spread. Buffalo are favorites, 1.5 point favorites, so they must be playing in Buffalo. And they are expensive. We're looking at 8,200 for Allen, 8,000 for Prescott. If I was looking for value, Cooks is a value at 5,200. Let's see what these defenses are giving up, though. The weak spot for Dallas is wideouts, so that puts Cooks in play. The weak spot for Dallas's defense is wideouts, so Cooks is not in play. That would be Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis plays better at home. So let's see what Gabe Davis's price tag is. Davis is 5,500. If we put him in there, leaves us with 2,800 per position. Let's see. Jake Ferguson might be interesting. On the Dallas side, the slot receivers are getting 20.5 DraftKings points. That's obviously CeeDee Lamb, who runs 59% of his routes from the slot. So it's a good matchup for CeeDee Lamb. He would probably be my favorite high price guy on the slate this week. But let's see what kind of ownership he's going to have. CeeDee Lamb is looking at only 8% ownership for this matchup. So, I mean, that's not bad, but he is expensive, which explains, like why that number is what it is. Maybe we take out, take a look at that in a minute. Let's find out what defense we want to use this week. Bills versus Dallas is cheap. New England, I don't hate versus Kansas City playing at home for 2,300. Because this is a matchup that Belichick's going to get his defense all fired up for. Let's see what they've done recently. Last week, they held Pittsburgh to 18 points. They held Chargers to 6 points. They're doing a good job of holding teams to low scores, but they're not, doing any explosive plays or like any putting up any DraftKings points. So they're good at preventing teams from scoring points, but they're not good at doing much else. Let's see, the Jets, Commanders, Giants at New Orleans, Carolina at Atlanta, or Carolina versus Atlanta. I don't like any of these defense matchups, really. The Rams might be my favorite. They're at 3,100. I think I would take my chances on the Patriots because I really don't like anyone above that. So that leaves us at 3,300 for the tight end position. At 3,300, let's see. Trying to see if there's a good one that we said. The Giants tight ends have a good matchup against New Orleans. I believe Aaron Waller is coming back this week. He's officially listed as questionable, but he's been activated from injured reserve. And the expectation is that he will play, but he's playing for the first time in weeks, and he's 4,400, so he's a little bit pricey for what we're looking for. But Waller has a really good matchup. Green Bay has a good matchup. Let's see if we can find Green Bay's tight end here. Kraft. There he is. So we get Love. We get him in a double stack with Reed and Kraft. Running it back with Rashad White. Then we get Mostert in there. We get Hopkins in there as a one-off. We got Gabe Davis as a one-off too. And then Kyron Williams as a one-off. So if we wanted to try and correlate, we could mess around with the correlation and stuff like that. I really don't want to do a run back with Mostert. With Hopkins against Houston, you could do a run back there. Maybe Kyron Williams would be the guy to take out. Let's take out Kyron Williams and see what else we have in flex. We take out Kyrie Williams, we could put in Cooper Kupp. We could put in Mike Evans. That would give us a run back for another run back for Tampa Bay, but that's a pretty heavy stack on that game. Let's see. Kyrie Williams, there he is. Not interested in Waddle. Not really interested in Barkley. Yeah, there's a lot of a lot of guys I'm just not really interested in. So that's a kind of a tough spot. Like maybe Zeke with that Patriots Zeke with that Patriots defense, and then that gives us an extra 2,000 to play with. Um, Maybe we take Gabe Davis out, see where that puts us. Mike Evans again. I like Mike Evans obviously better than Gabe Davis. So that would be an option, and that give us another run back in that Tampa Bay game, even though it's a little bit heavy. That would give us a lot of correlation in the lineup. We'd have Love to Reed and Kraft, and be running it back with Evans and White. We're hoping that this game would shoot out. It has a total of 41 and a half Draftkings, or 41 and a half points. 3.5 point favorites are Green Bay. Green Bay has a good matchup all around. Where are they playing this game? At Green Bay. So, that's a little bit rough on the Tampa Bay side if they're playing in Green Bay. Let's see what other players we have here. No real run backs that I can think of. I wish we could get up to, let's see. Let's look at the flex and look at 7,500 in there. Yeah, it's something that you can play around with. Like Lamb would be ultimately the guy. If I wanted to work my way up to Lamb and take out Elliott, I wonder if I could get a Buffalo guy in there for my flex if I did that. But let's see, like all the options here. Yeah, not really seeing too much. Let's look at the Buffalo specifically. Deuce Vaughn is where it's Khalil Shakir. Khalil Shakir. He's not really interesting though because they got Knox back now, so they're running less of those three wide receiver sets. They're going more back to the two tight end sets, which is not good. It's not a good offense for Buffalo. But you can play around with a build like this. Maybe you guys have a guy that you like more that you could plug in there. But let's try taking out Love, and by that I'll probably take out Reed for now. Let's put in Levis. Let's see if we put in Levis. Leaves us with 9,800. We got Levis to Hopkins. If we wanted to run it back with a Houston guy, let's see, who is Tennessee the weakest against? We know it's those receivers, but 19.7 points a game to the slot receivers. Noah Brown is running 50% of his routes from the slot, and Nico Collins is hurt. Noah Brown is played through the knee injury the past few weeks. What's he done the past few weeks? 0 points the past 2 weeks. We don't have CJ Stroud this week. We got Davis Mills. So maybe it's a situation where now we don't have a good tight end matchup for him. So, I think I would probably run it back with probably just stick with Noah Brown. Let's see what Nico Collins' situation is. His injury is a calf injury. Yeah, he wasn't able to. Let's go with Noah Brown. If we went with Noah Brown there, let's put Kraft back in there. He's been getting a lot of opportunity lately. But he hasn't been really doing too much with it. What other tight end options do we have? Let's see what the best tight ends on the slate are. Again, it's a stupid, Giants tight end. But Kraft has the the second best matchup on the slate as far as the DraftKings points allowed per game that Green Bay is getting from Tampa Bay. The best is the Waller matchup, but Waller's coming back from that injury, so I don't like using him. Tennessee's got a good one, but there's no one in. You know what? Njoku might be the guy to roll with here. If we roll with Njoku, that leaves us with 3,100. Yeah, I just don't. I like that Jordan Love build a lot better. The way that it kind of came together really easily. Will Levis is a little more difficult, but maybe it would be just a situation where we just need to do a skinny stack and hope that they come out just looking to fire. Noah Brown at 5K is a little expensive. And Dalton Schultz doesn't have a really good matchup against that Tennessee defense. I do like Lamb. I like getting Lamb in there. I like getting Mostert in there. I think those are two key guys for the slate tomorrow. I do like this Levis to Hopkins stack. Maybe instead of Brown, maybe instead of running it back with Brown, we don't do a run back and we get one of these Rams in there. Let's get Kyren Williams in there. Yeah, we can't really do anything there. When you have Lamb in there at 9,200, it just kind of just limits what you can do. But he's up there at McCaffrey prices. But he's got a good matchup in that game. But let's take him out. Let's say that Buffalo's defense does well this week and is able to limit him. Let's get McCaffrey in there. McCaffrey had a down week last week. You know that he's going to be bouncing back. So that leaves us with 4K per guy. I don't really want to run it back on anyone on San Francisco from the Arizona side. I don't want to run back anyone with Mostert. Let's get CD back in there. Let's try Gabe Davis. Put Gabe Davis in there. That only leaves us with 2,600. Let's put Kraft back in there. Leaves us with 4,300. If we wanted to do that, let's see what 4,300 gets us. Shaheed. All paths always lead back to Shaheed on this show. Woods, if you wanted to get a Houston guy in there. If I wanted to put in Noah Brown, what is let's put him in instead of Davis. You've seen that we can get Davis in there if you want to do a run back for Lamb, but let's put Noah Brown in there. See where that leaves us at the flex. 4,800. It can get us Tajay Spears. That gives another target for Will Levis. Ferguson. I like Ferguson tomorrow. What's Buffalo giving up to the tight end? Not giving up a ton to tight end. Njoku. If you wanted to go two tight end, like you could throw Njoku in there. But that's a direction. You can play around with it. You get the idea. I do like Levis to Hopkins stacks, but it might be better just using Hopkins as a single target unless you can crack that correlation and everything. But that's a direction that you can go. Gave you a couple cheap stack options. I like that Jordan Love. The more that I walk through this, Jordan Love stack seems like a good option for tomorrow. Seems like you can do a lot with it, and there's run back options with that one, which flow kind of naturally with that Rashad White play. So I do like that direction to go after kind of walking through it here. Other than that, yeah, just hit that like button. Give me up to 15 likes. I'll try to put a short video out before the slate starts tomorrow. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Looking for 300 subscribers. I'm at about 225 right now. And also make sure to sign up on Underdog. Going to be putting out a ton of playoff best ball content. I'm going to start that next week. Going to take a thorough look at playoff scenarios and try to pick out some good value based on those playoff scenarios. Right now, I've been looking hardest at Buffalo, and I like the value on Buffalo. Buffalo's going to have a tough path. I don't want to make any light of the path that they're going to have to get into the playoffs. But if they do get into the playoffs, they're going to make a run in the playoffs. I think they're just they're just going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder, and a team like Buffalo playing with a chip on their shoulder is going to be dangerous in the playoffs. And we've seen what they can do. We've seen their upside. There's really no reason for them, not to have upside this year. But use the promo code SEEK. That's going to get you up to $100 match on a $100 deposit for first-time depositors. So if this is your first venture into playoff best ball, you can start at those lower contests, which are $5 to enter. Just do like 20 of those for that $100, and then use the $100 that you deposited to put 4 into the $25 contest or something like that. But make sure that you're doing those $5 contests first to get an idea of, like the feel for those drafts and, strategies that you want to use, where those ADPs are falling. Even like I'm using the $5 drafts right now just to get an idea of ADP. And I've been practicing, trying to get those Buffalo stacks and stuff like that before I jump into those $25 contests. But I did one of those gauntlet contests, the $25 ones, and I ended up with a Buffalo stack pretty easily in there too. So it's right now it's a risky play. You could end up drafting a bunch of Buffalo, and then the season starts and you're screwed because they didn't make it to the playoffs. But if you believe that Buffalo is going to make it into the playoffs, then right now there's a good value on Buffalo, and I think they can make a run if they make it into the playoffs. And that is why I am drafting them currently in playoff best ball. But that's it for this week's show. Thanks for watching, and I will see you at some point tomorrow with the Game Script show for Sunday Night Football. Thanks, guys.